All right, guys, I know it's different setting here. There's no car or commute, no blue polo. Finish up that job, but I still want to talk basketball. So I'm keeping the same format, basically, really not well researched, just kind of off the cuff, just talking basketball. And I mean, the first game's literally tomorrow, so I'm sure my 31 subscribers really missed me here, but I'm back. I don't know, really no schedule at the moment, but we'll see kind of where we go from here. But really, what I wanted to talk about is NBA extensions. The deadline is today for the 2018 NBA draft. So that's, we already saw Luka, Trey, Jaren Jackson Jr., Michael Porter Jr. Receive pretty lucrative extensions. Cal Bridges as well. And the one kind of holdout, the one question mark is DeAndre Ayton. Even Mo Bamba got one. Obviously not a ton of money. But DeAndre Ayton could not reach an agreement with the Phoenix Suns. And I kind of want to break down these, talk about where the value's at. I feel like, Trae Young, Luka Doncic, their careers already speak for themselves in terms of deserving, max money. And, their accomplishments obviously push that number up into like 200 million or whatever, because, max kind of depends on player accomplishments. It depends on a few variables. So, a max for DeAndre Ayton is not the same as it is for some of his draft counterparts or colleagues, however you want to say it. Michael Porter Jr. also in that class, which, worries me a little bit if I'm the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, he's got the talent. He's shot, historically from three. But on the other hand, dude gets hurt a lot. Dude is sometimes politically controversial in terms of, I don't know where he is on the vaccine. You might lose him in certain states. So there's that. Not that that's more like a short-term thing than a long-term thing. But obviously, you've committed to him long-term. And it doesn't mean necessarily you can't trade him. But obviously, if he doesn't play up to that value, that makes him harder to move in a deal. In potentially, getting a bigger star, because Michael Porter Jr., I don't know, when you look at his ceiling, can he sneak into an all-star game at some point? It's hard in the West, obviously, with the talent they got in the conference. This is the year to do it for him, because without Jamal Murray to start the season, Michael Porter Jr. is your, clearly offensive two guy in terms of a second option. So if he's going to really show he can score off the dribble, maybe work on some facilitating, because at the end of the day, Nikola Jokic is going to run the show. But can Michael Porter continue to shoot at the same percentages with maybe an increased volume and increased attention from defenses? I think that's a big question mark. And can he live up to that contract? I think, Trey and Luka are pretty surefire. Him, maybe. Jaren Jackson, also another junior. Questionable just in terms of health. I think it made sense, for Memphis as they're building this young core. You don't really have a choice in terms of, you can let them walk, or you can try and find someone else to a trade partner or something like that, but they're going to have to extend him at some point. So you need someone that would also, be willing to commit to him long term if you want to get any value out of him. So, he showed out. He had a great last preseason game. He shot lights out from three. In today's game, a guy with that height and that length, is huge and could be a major part of a playoff team, I would imagine, if he can stay healthy. And I think he probably, well, there's no way to know that. But if he does, I think, he'll be a really important part of a playoff team at some point. Obviously not as big a deal as Porter, Luka, Trey, but I think, he'll be all right. Now, DeAndre Ayton seems to be actually like split people. Maybe, I don't know. I really wasn't like a dominant force during the regular season. I feel like people forget, like, I don't know. I get he had a big playoff run. He played well in against the Clippers and Jazz, and I think they played Jazz. No, they didn't play the Jazz. Clippers, Lakers. That's what it was. They played Lakers, Jazz, not Jazz. They didn't play the Jazz. All right. Um, Lakers, Clippers, and Nuggets. And then Milwaukee. Giannis blocked his shit and ended up on the wrong side of some highlights, and that's fine. But he had like 14 and 10 over the regular season, and my only question is, I get he's young. I don't know if I've said this before, but I feel he has like the Greg Oden thing where like his age, but he looks just older, and that like you can't help but think like, yeah, this guy's not gonna last long. And obviously Greg Oden had the injury issues that Ayton doesn't, but like Ayton, if he looks like this at 23, him at like 40, him at even 35, it's hard to imagine him and someone that can't really spread the floor outside of the paint and elbows maybe. To give him, his version of max money, I agree that the Suns, I agree with some hesitations. And Kevin Huerter just got a 4-year, $65 million deal. So obviously, everyone's staying put. There's some holdouts. And again, back to Ayton, like a 14 and 10 guy, someone, yes, he can, he rim runs, he defends at a pretty good level. But I can't help but think, like a Jonas Valanciunas, like he's not making max money. He probably puts up the same numbers and, will shoot it with 3 or 2, make a 3 every once in a while, can rebound at the same amount, can score at the same amount, maybe not as athletic, maybe can't defend the rim as much, but like you could probably make up for DeAndre Ayton with less money than a max contract, and I feel like that's what it comes down to for Phoenix, because they're really, it's tough because I don't put Ayton in the same class as some other guys when you talk about young cores, when you talk about Tatum and Brown in Boston, and you look at like, Booker and Ayton. Ayton, first of all, hasn't made an all-star team, and so I don't think of him in that same like elite class. So, like I think you could get value out of like veterans that would take less money than tying up DeAndre Ayton. Now I understand if you lose him, that's a void you're gonna have to fill at some point. So and they're not like a great free agent destination. Maybe they acquire someone in a trade. But I don't even know. I mean, they also extended Landry Shamet just now, which got to be kind of a kick in the dick for DeAndre Ayton. Whether they can afford a max, and if they had to choose between Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton, a lot of people like Mikal Bridges a lot. I almost feel like was so underrated and underappreciated that this playoff run, similar to Ayton, like almost overvalued him. I mean, he's 4.90, something like that. I mean, it's a lot of money for someone who kind of can disappear from game to game on the offensive end. Obviously brings, the defensive prowess every game, but offensively, comes in and out. And that's tough if you're paying that guy, $20+ million. So I think they chose him. And, the NBA at the end of the day is a wing league. When you think of the guys that have been successful in the league, you talk about LeBron, Kawhi, KD, a lot of them work around the outside and, have post games every once in a while. And Giannis is obviously an exception to that to a certain extent, but even he can play a little outside and drive from the wing versus just always posting up or getting off rebounds, stuff like that. So I think Bridges probably does have more value than Ayton in that regard. And he's just not as replaceable. And I feel like Ayton can be replaced. Like he doesn't have that much unique to bring to the table to be worthy of a max. And, if you like the guy, I don't hate the guy. I have nothing against him. It's just in terms of numbers and stats and feel, it's hard to justify that contract. And with Chris Paul there, like, who knows what their next window is. Even with Ayton, or maybe they make it work without him. I think they're going to be in the title hunt this year. Maybe Ayton's not happy with the contract. Who knows how he performs? Maybe he tries to play even harder and work harder to make him seem worthy of a max. But at the end of the day, all these guys getting extended, Ayton's got to be a little upset. But I think he has to realize, what his value is. So that's my take on it. Let me know what your take is. I'm sure someone here's really willing to defend this guy. I'll happily engage in some intellectual discourse about it. But thanks again for bearing with me here in the changes and whatnot. Appreciate it. And, as always, take care of yourselves. Take it easy. Opening day tomorrow. I will see you next time.